Okay, here's some more chain rule examples, except this time we're dealing mostly with trig functions where our outer function is the trig function in this case, and our inner function is a linear function. So the derivative of the outer function is just cos, the derivative of the inner function is just -5. So using the chain rule, we take the derivative of sine, which is the cosine of x, the cosine of the inside, don't change the inside, times the derivative of the inside, which is -5. I just pull the -5 up front. So I get -5, the cosine of 7 minus 5x. Here's another trig example, but except we're using the product rule. We have x times the secant, and the inner function is 3 minus 8x. So the product rule says the derivative of the first, which in this case is just 1, times the secant of 3 minus 8x, plus the first function times the derivative of the second. Well, the second derivative of secant, is secant of 3 minus 8x times the tangent of 3 minus 8x. Now we do the derivative of the inside, which in this case is -8. So let's just rewrite this as secant 3 minus 8x. Let's pull this -8 up front, so -8x secant 3 minus 8x, tangent of 3 minus 8x, and I'm just going to factor out a secant of 3 minus 8x, and then we'll be done. 3 minus 8x, I take it out of that, I'm just left with 1 minus 8x, tangent of 3 minus 8x. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as y equals cotangent of pi minus x to the -1. Disregard this down here. I'm going to do this one in a second. This is a edit. So we take derivative of cotangent, which is negative cosecant squared, pi minus x to the -1, which is the inside, times the derivative of the inside. Well, pi is just a constant, so the derivative of that is 0. So this -1 comes down, so it becomes plus x squared to the -2. And then I'm just going to move this x to the -2 down and leave this up in the numerator. So my final answer is dy dx equals negative cosecant squared pi minus x to the -1 all over x squared. Here's a classic example of a chain rule again, where you have sine inside of cosine. So my outer function is cosine, my inner function is sine. So when using the chain rule, you just take the derivative of the outer function, which is just negative sine, leave the inner function, times by the derivative of the inner function, which is cosine of x. And traditionally, you move the simpler function up front, so we put in negative cosine of x, the sine of sine x. Sine of sine x is not sine squared. Sine squared times sine x times sine x is sine squared x, but this is the sine of the sine x. And our last example is, in this case, we're using a chain rule, but our outer function is the square rooting function. So let's rewrite it as the cosine of x quantity to the 1/2 power. So taking the derivative of that, I get 1/2 the cosine of x to the -1/2 times the derivative of cosine, which is negative sine x. So I'm just going to move this in the denominator and move this up front. So I move the cos x to the -1/2 down to the bottom, so I get dy dx equals negative sine over 2 square root of cosine x.